the drowned car, and the professional freeloader. What's the craziest thing you've seen at a company party? One of our coworkers completely lost it after drinking too much and decided to drive herself home. The boss and her direct manager ran out to the parking lot to stop her, but she started fighting them, punching them in the face just to get to her car. In the end, she managed to drive about 100 meters away from the parking lot and then drove the car straight into a lake. At a company where I used to work, they somehow managed to hire a professional freeloader who clearly had no intention of actually working. After just 2 weeks, he conveniently got injured and went on leave for 6 months while collecting compensation. The very week he came back, we had an office party held on a tennis court. While playing, he fell again. An ambulance had to be called, and the guy disappeared for another 6 months. After that, he simply quit. In total, he actually worked about 3 weeks, but kept getting paid for almost an entire year. Wrestling, huge bills, and owners cheating. Many years ago, everyone got pretty drunk at the company Christmas party. Some guy, for whatever reason, decided to pick up the head of HR, an older, rather trashy woman. He lost his balance and fell backward, literally smashing her through a table with her back like something out of pro wrestling. No one got fired, but after that incident, fun Christmas parties were no longer a thing at our company. We were given drink vouchers, but no one mentioned that ordering expensive alcohol wasn't allowed. The result was a $12,000 bar bill for the company. At another Christmas party, the company owner and his wife both cheated on each other separately. Maybe they were swingers. Nope. Shortly after that, they filed for divorce. I once saw my boss at the time having sex with our regional manager right on the conference room table while she was yelling, "Yes, harder!" She was dressed in a sexy police officer costume. It was a Halloween office party. I was absolutely shocked. Wrecked golf carts and an awkward bathroom moment. I worked at a Toyota dealership. At a celebrity golf tournament, some of the office staff got so drunk that they crashed several golf carts. As a result, our dealership was banned from participating in events at that venue. One guy jumped up on stage at a karaoke bar. The staff immediately demanded that he leave. He refused, so they literally restrained him, carried him out, and threw him outside. Honestly, it was very satisfying to watch, especially because he was a real jerk. A cat once fell through a ceiling tile. It lived in the office, apparently in the ceiling. The little mystery almost landed right on the boss's head. I once walked in on a married marketing manager. He was 46, with our intern. She was 22 in the restroom. They didn't notice someone had come in, and she was very clearly and very loudly enjoying herself. So I awkwardly backed out and quietly left. The CFO once paid for oral services from strippers for employees and wrote it off as a business expense. Hotel-wide brawl. That night, 2 different companies returned to the same hotel after their Christmas parties, and chaos broke out almost immediately. First, a fight erupted in the hotel bar. The instigator and one of his coworkers were quickly dragged outside. Almost right after that, in a room next to ours, a husband assaulted one of my wife's coworkers. 4 people started violently pounding on our door, mistakenly thinking it was us. In the end, 6 of us went over to the room and, fairly politely but firmly, escorted the husband to the elevator. About 10 minutes later, a guy ran down the hallway, yelling that someone was raping his mother in one of the rooms, but he didn't know which one. He was clearly under the influence of something. I managed to calm him down and suggested we go to the front desk. When we got there, a huge guy from the second company, a regional gym chain, was already speaking with the manager. He was explaining that someone had tried to break into his room while his wife was changing. The guy turned around to apologize for the delay, saw us, suddenly froze, pointed, and shouted, "That's the asshole!" He immediately tackled the guy to the floor by the collar. The accused guy was probably around 6'3" and weighed maybe 155 pounds, while the attacker was short, maybe 5'7", but easily 240 pounds of solid muscle and steroids. I managed to pull him off at the last second and explained that this was heading straight into felony territory, especially since the police had already arrived because of the earlier fight. The guy was arrested. My wife and I convinced her coworker, who had a split lip, to file a report. While she was doing that, the big guy thanked me for stopping him and offered me a sandwich from Jimmy John's. At 2 a.m., they had ordered food for the people still hanging out at the bar. In the morning, we found out that the husband had taken the coworker home shortly after we went to bed. So we just checked out of the hotel and drove home. 80s dancing, broken bones, and a thieving vice principal. The head cashier at a store where I worked as a bagger in high school climbed onto a table and started dancing, pulling her top off. The party was held at an American Legion Hall sometime around 1984. There was a keg of beer right there, and no one seemed to care that I was 16 and casually pouring myself drinks. At one point, it suddenly seemed like a great idea to ride scooters back to the hotel. After spending half the day checking in and paying for the rooms, one of my coworkers crashed about 10 seconds after starting the ride and broke both of his wrists. I work at a school. On the last day of the semester, one of the vice principals was fired for the full set of issues: financial misconduct, mishandling standardized testing, and a video of her yelling at a student. We were already lining up for the holiday buffet when she stormed out of her office, grabbed a plate, casually cut in line, piled food onto it, and simply walked out of the school. Bloody roller skates and a sex show in China. The company party had a theme. 2 women from IT chose a roller derby look, bright outfits, and roller skates. They were skating around the venue, drinking, clearly having a great time. Then one of them had quite a bit of white wine, rolled out onto the dance floor on her skates, and took a brutal face-first fall. There was blood everywhere. Doctors said her injuries looked like she'd been in a motorcycle crash. She broke her nose, cheekbones, and sinuses. She ended up needing several reconstructive surgeries on her face. My CEO once invited the entire office to a live sex show. I ended up sitting in the front row, less than 2 meters from the stage, where a Russian couple was having sex on a rotating platform. Around us sat about 100 constantly smoking Chinese spectators, along with our office group. Some dramatic, almost anthem-like music was playing in the background. And right at the musical climax, the performers reached their climax too. The next day, we came back to work, laughed about it, and overall, no one made a big deal out of it. Racism, wads of cash, and a scandalous winner. Our IT guy got so drunk that he casually started throwing around the N-word right in front of his black girlfriend. Monday at the office was painfully awkward. He never came back to the company after that. The boss was tired but didn't want to ruin everyone's night, so he handed each of us a wad of cash, about $500, and said, "Guys, go hit a strip club, have fun," and left. An older coworker and I just pocketed the money and went to sleep. At a huge Christmas party, one employee kept getting louder and angrier, trash-talking the company every chance he got. And of course, he ended up winning the grand prize. They called him up on stage. The boss rushed forward, trying to grab the microphone, but the winner managed to shout a couple of FUs, threw the prize on the floor, and walked out through the main entrance. Attempted murder and 5 years of pain for $100. One manager was known for being a real jerk, and that night he was extremely drunk. I saw him arguing with an employee when suddenly he pulled a gun from under his jacket, pressed it almost against the guy's face, and pulled the trigger. Luckily, nothing happened. He had forgotten to cock the gun. When he tried to do it, several guests jumped on him. Later, it turned out that, in his drunken state, he had convinced himself that this employee was having an affair with his wife. We had set up 3 huge containers full of ice and drinks in the suite. At some point, people started daring each other to dunk their heads into the ice water. I was convinced to keep my head underwater for 2 minutes for $100. The next morning began 2 years of misery, 1 ear infection after another, about 30 in total. I had 2 surgeries and only fully recovered 5 years later. And in that haze, I somehow lost the $100 anyway. 5 years of pain for nothing. Inappropriate proposals. A coworker suggested I sit on his lap and call him daddy. I was 23, he was over 50. His wife was also at the party. At a team building event, the boss asked the question, "You have to choose a coworker who will witness your next sexual encounter. Who do you pick?" Everyone looked at me like, what kind of question is that? I chose the most openly gay coworker, because he's so uncomfortable with female anatomy that he definitely wouldn't look. A candy bar instead of a raise and free pizza. I asked for a small raise and was told, "You don't really do anything special." At the employee awards ceremony, they announced my name. I walked up on stage and they handed me a Milky Way bar. 1 lousy candy bar. Everyone knew I had diabetes and couldn't even eat it. I quit a month later. We were told there would be a mandatory pizza party. In reality, there was one small pizza for 14 people, and the boss immediately took 2 slices for himself. On payday, we found out we weren't paid for that time because alcohol was present at the event, even though no one actually opened any. Apparently, a legal loophole. Total chaos and the finale. At one party, everything was happening at once. Several people were hooking up in the showroom. Someone was snorting cocaine. Someone was smoking weed. The regional manager slept with a sales associate and then passed out in a ditch behind the dumpsters. A co-worker from my department won Employee of the Year. While the director was presenting the award, the winner got so drunk that he vomited on the director mid-speech. At one annual party, I downed 23 cocktails in one night. At some point, I went to the bathroom, tried to fart, and ended up shitting myself. I threw my underwear in the trash. Later, a co-worker ran out, shouting, "Someone pooped themselves," holding my underwear between 2 fingers. I was like, "Those are mine. Why did you take them out of the trash?"